Sit down right there. Do not move.
Get down.
Can I get up?
No, get down.
I'm standing up.
Get
My leg.
down. Get out now.
Drop it! Drop it! Drop it! Whatever it is, drop it! Drop it! Stop resisting me! Sir! Flat on your face! Down like an airplane! Hand down like an airplane! Flat down!
The arrest we just saw happened in March 2020 at the Ocean Mall on Singer Island in Florida. It was based on a report that the man, who was arrested was suspiciously following and approaching young girls, teenagers, while sweating profusely. And not only that, but police found a massive knife in his vehicle. He ended up in a cell for a few nights. And this was at a time when the coronavirus had emerged around the world. And it seemed to have had a significant impact on this particular man. His name was David Anthony, who just happened to be the nightmare of Gretchen Anthony, his estranged wife, who disappeared not long after filing for divorce. It's an intriguing case with an element of mystery, while at the same time it's rather bizarre. The friends of Gretchen Anthony began receiving text messages from her over several days, explaining to them she had caught a serious case of the coronavirus. I'm sure we can all remember it wasn't unusual not to see family or friends for long periods due to either being in lockdown or isolation, especially if you were unfortunate enough to have the symptoms of COVID. When it first broke out, there was mass panic. If someone coughed near you, you thought you caught the virus, remember that. And shopping was a nightmare. There were times when it was difficult to get hold of toilet roll. It was under those conditions when Gretchen, who was 51, sent a text message to Ava, a 12-year-old daughter, who was staying with her father, Gretchen's ex-husband, as they shared custody. The text read, "Good morning, tested positive for coronavirus early this morning. That means I have to stay here for at least 2 weeks." Her daughter replied, "Okay, I really hope you get better." More text messages described her worsening condition to the point where Gretchen had to admit herself into the Jupiter Medical Center for treatment, followed by a further text claiming she was transferred to another facility in Florida run by the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention for further observation, in Belgrade apparently, over an hour's drive away from her home. But the problem with that is this: no such facility existed in Belgrade. But what did exist in the mind of those receiving these anxiety-provoking messages was the awareness that Gretchen supposedly had the strength to send such messages, yet failed to answer her phone to anyone who called it. The messages revealed she was so ill with COVID it merited the use of a ventilator. However, it didn't appear to prevent her from communicating by text. And if she was able to do that, surely she would have answered those phone calls. Plus, her relationship with her daughter Ava was so strong, there's no doubt she would have contacted her by phone. All of this didn't make sense to those who knew her. They felt something wasn't quite right. It was bizarre and worrisome. In fact, they were so worried authorities were contacted to find out what was going on. One of the first things the police did was reach out to the Jupiter Medical Center, as text messages sent by Gretchen made it clear that's where she was at one point. However, no records existed within the facility to support such a claim. They felt it wouldn't do any harm to check out the car park surrounding the centre, and lo and behold, they found her car parked up. It was a dark blue Mini Cooper. Alarmingly, her purse was located in the vehicle, sitting in plain sight, with blood on the steering wheel and on the gears, which triggered their suspicion of potential foul play. They now more than ever needed to urgently find the whereabouts of the missing woman. The question of Gretchen's location was their main concern. They also wondered how her vehicle ended up in the car park. By Thursday, the 26th of March, 5 days had passed since anyone had seen Gretchen. Police investigators from the town of Jupiter, where she lived, were determined to find her. Another thing they did was visit her home while wearing body cameras, and what they found was chilling.
Her ex-husband, Jeff, has a keypad because they share custody of their child, and he lets them in.
Inside her home, investigators found some spray cleanup bottles and a rag on the kitchen counter. And inside of Gretchen's washing machine, there was some rags with substance on it that was blood-like.
Upstairs, there was a broken glass frame on the landing. And then in the master bedroom, on the comforter, there were small pieces of broken glass and also what appeared to be small droplets of blood on the wall.
Up to now, it's not looking good. It appeared a violent struggle occurred and someone tried to do a clean-up job in the house, but left evidence behind. Another area around the property was also investigated.
They then went out to the garage, which is detached from the home. There was a key that had actually been broken off in the lock of the door leading into the garage. So law enforcement forced entry into the garage in hopes of locating Gretchen, but unfortunately they did not. But they did notice that there was the strong smell of some cleaning agent and that the garage appeared to be wet.
The strong smell of a cleaning agent is a big indicator in this case. Officers became even more concerned when one of the neighbours told them he noticed a soapy substance flowing from underneath Gretchen's garage door, and his nose picked up the powerful smell of some kind of a chemical, implying that someone was definitely trying to clean something up, perhaps even a crime scene. Another neighbour approached police with a disturbing incident that she witnessed. She shared this information with them when they were looking for clues on the 26th, but the incident she relayed took place previously, during the early morning of Saturday the 21st.
I heard, I was asleep upstairs in my room, and I heard a really serious woman scream, like just screaming, like she was being attacked.
There's still no sign of Gretchen, but the neighbours within this community were astute. In fact, the same woman who heard the screaming also noticed a vehicle parked on or near Gretchen's property. Not only did she notice it, but she did something that gave the police a huge break.
I saw a truck backed in that I didn't recognize. It was backed in a couple doors down.
The neighbor also told law enforcement that later that same day she saw the vehicle backed, but this time she didn't just take a picture of the truck, she actually took a picture of the license plate.
And that vehicle, a black Nissan pickup truck, was there on the morning of the 21st, and they wasted no time finding out who it belonged to. It was registered to Gretchen's estranged husband, David Anthony, the man who was arrested the week before for suspiciously following and approaching young girls.
Stop resisting me! Sir, flat on your face, down like an airplane! Hand down like an airplane! Flat down!
But before we talk about him, let's go back inside the house that was being searched. It was discovered Gretchen had security cameras installed, but unfortunately they'd been removed, possibly to destroy any incriminating evidence. However, it was soon learned that the images recorded could be recovered from its storage space on the cloud, a genius piece of modern technology that keeps video safe from anyone who steals or breaks the installed cameras. As a consequence, a warrant was issued to her security provider to make that happen, to recover the video recording. In the meantime, while they waited, investigators realised they had no idea where Gretchen could have been, but they did have her ex's car spotted near Gretchen's home when she went missing. They reasoned that maybe he knew something that they didn't. Therefore, he was required for a little chat, but he wasn't answering his phone. It soon came to their attention that Gretchen had filed for divorce just a few weeks previously. David had moved in with his mother, who lived nearby. The next step they took was to pay him a visit at his mother's home, again utilising body cameras.
Hi,
Hey ma'am, how are you? Hi, are you David Anthony's mom?
Yes.
And David's not there, his mom is, and she tells them that David came and took his black and white husky and he told her he was moving out of the country to Costa Rica.
I mean, you have to fly to get to Costa Rica, so how...
No, he was planning on taking his truck.
How is he going to get to Costa Rica with his truck? We can't just drive there. There's
That's
water
what
in between.
Well, that's what we told him.
Yeah.
We said, that's a long drive and stuff.
David Anthony is on the road and he is making every effort to leave the country. We believe he's our guy.
The information received from his mother was very disturbing. She explained that he packed up his truck on the Tuesday. That would have been the 24th of March, 3 days after Gretchen disappeared. And he wasn't alone. His faithful dog, a black and white husky named Kobe, was with him as they hit the road heading for another country. And that told them he was attempting to flee, heightening their growing suspicion regarding his involvement in this developing case. Now, just after the discussion with David's mother, detectives obtained surveillance video pertaining to the car park at the Jupiter Medical Center, as they were keen to find out how Gretchen's Mini Cooper arrived at that location. And what they observed startled them. On the 23rd of March, the same day those bizarre text messages started, video footage emerged as a truck was seen driving around in the same area the Mini Cooper was found. And it was identified as a match to the truck photographed by the neighbour on or near Gretchen's property a couple of days prior, the one that belonged to David Anthony. As they continued watching the surveillance tape, their interest peaked when at 5:30 a.m. the next day on the 24th, they saw the Mini Cooper pulling up to park in the exact spot it was found. Someone then emerges from the vehicle. The image makes it difficult to identify the character, but whoever it is was very tall, wearing dark clothing while walking away. Clearly it wasn't Gretchen. Interestingly, David Anthony was 6'7" tall. This footage was recorded in the early morning of the very same day his mother said he left for Costa Rica. By now, investigators were totally convinced all of this evidence pointed to David as being responsible, or at least connected, to what had happened to Gretchen. Before this bizarre mystery occurred, David and Gretchen were once a happily married couple. They met in the gym when Gretchen, who was a teacher at the time in Jupiter, needed some help from a personal trainer. Now, David was a personal trainer with a magnetic personality which she liked, and they immediately clicked at their first meeting in 2008. A relationship soon started to form, but there was a problem, as Gretchen was already with someone, a man named Jeffrey, who she'd been with for a few years, and married him in 2007, the year before she met David. Gretchen and Jeffrey also had a child together around that period, but their connection as a couple was strained, leaving them unhappy. However, they did their best to make it work, but unfortunately it didn't, thus ending in divorce. And this is when David steps in, triggering the beginning of their relationship. In 2015, the couple got married in Las Vegas at an Elvis chapel. They were happy together, or so it appeared. Gretchen was a caring person who was 100% committed to David, while making sure her daughter was given a good life. Even though she shared custody of her daughter with Jeffrey, her ex, there was nothing she wouldn't do for her. David played his role, as he was an intelligent, well-spoken individual, giving off the impression he was a great stepdad, a view that he enjoyed people having of him. A view he didn't like people knowing about him was this: he had a Jekyll and Hyde type personality, and as a teen and young adult, he struggled with severe depression, showing symptoms his family believed was a mental health condition known as bipolar, where his mood was often elevated. One of his family members disclosed how he was officially diagnosed with bipolar. It was noticed how at any given time he felt on top of the world one moment, excited and happy, or it might be a feeling of irritability that lingered on for a while. Then directly after that he'd come crashing down under the burden of depression. However, he refused to take medication of any kind, preferring to devote himself to exercise instead. One of the places he worked on and off as a personal trainer was at the Orange Theory gym in Jupiter. His boss was a lady named Tabitha Hopkins, who described him as an excellent trainer who inspired his clients to reach new heights in their quest for fitness. People raved about how good he was at his job, but Tabitha had to fire him on at least 2 occasions for alarmingly expressing aggressive behaviour, particularly toward women. His boss became concerned about his changing moods and explained he wasn't manageable. His mood swings and temper seemed to disrupt everyone around him. And then finally, on the 24th of February 2020, another problem revealed itself regarding his employment to the Orange Theory gym, and when confronted about it, his anger exploded toward his boss, who this time fired him for good. Gretchen began to notice this behaviour within him after about 2 years of marriage. He didn't always display it, it came every now and then, subjecting her to chronic verbal abuse as well as paranoia, as he sometimes lost contact with reality. And it got so bad, they once separated for 6 months, although they did get back together. Now that once magnetic personality that attracted her to him was now systematically fading away. With regard to losing contact with reality, something happened in 2018 that frightened Gretchen. David believed the world was ending, so he loaded his truck with 3 big bags of rice, pots and pans, and several pairs of shoes before disappearing. Incidentally, he spoke about the end of the world to her on more than one occasion. This left her feeling powerless, not knowing what to do or how to help him. One way she tried to help herself was confiding in others regarding the issues she faced, especially as David was making her life feel as if it was a living nightmare. One of the incidents that created a nightmare happened in December 2019, when David packed her passport, her driving license, her credit cards, wedding ring, and some cash into his backpack. It plagued her so deeply she sent a text to her boss, who was also a friend, revealing she was afraid of her own husband, and that just happened to be the last straw. See, Gretchen had no choice but to end the relationship, and that's when David moved in with his mum. 2 months later, in February 2020, she filed for divorce a few days after he lost his job. And now in March 2020, a few weeks after that, she's missing. Authorities continued trying to contact David by phone, but he never picked up. No one knew where Gretchen or David was. Then suddenly Gretchen's phone started pinging off of a tower in Pensacola, 600 miles away. It was on the move, but the question is, what was a phone doing out there? Investigators believe the best way to find the missing woman was to track her phone, but not only hers. David's needed tracking as well. Records enabled authorities to find out the phones were moving together, westward, across Florida. They soon discovered a paper and video trail of David entering various jewellery stores in an attempt to sell items belonging to Gretchen, that he explained were left to him by a relative who recently died due to COVID. COVID seemed to be on his mind 24/7. When examining this video evidence, it became clear that Gretchen didn't appear once. What stood out more than anything was David's attempt to flee the country, yet his phone was being tracked side by side with Gretchen's as travelling together. I mean, what did that mean? Was his estranged wife running away with him? Or did he kidnap her? Or could it have been something worse? And who sent all of those worrying text messages on the 23rd that Gretchen was severely ill with COVID and mysteriously couldn't be found anywhere? The police felt it was time to issue a BOLO, an alert to be on the lookout for David's black Nissan truck. Then on the 27th of March, David's phone pinged in Pecos, Texas, more than 1,600 miles away from Jupiter, where he stopped in a hotel for the night. Then on the 28th it pinged again, this time in Las Cruces, New Mexico. Las Cruces police were immediately contacted for help, and armed with a description of his truck, they managed to eventually locate him toward the end of March.
Days later, police track Anthony, who'd skipped town to Las Cruces, New Mexico, and make an arrest.
You're detained right now, yeah. Watch out.
This offered an opportunity to ask him a few questions regarding the whereabouts of his wife. He explained he heard she'd been admitted into a CDC facility, getting treatment for COVID. He mentioned the last time he spoke to her was on the morning of the 21st of March, not long after the incident with those young girls. He then proceeded to talk about some kind of conspiracy theory, saying that Gretchen was in trouble with the company that she worked for. It was an electrical business called Viking Utility, which was going through a merger with another firm, a big one, known as Danella, who had connections to the current administration, apparently. Gretchen had allegedly uncovered severe financial wrongdoing regarding this merger and was fleeing Florida with David because she feared for her life. So the 21st wasn't the last time he spoke to Gretchen, according to this. He also implied she was running away from her ex-husband Jeff, but she couldn't divulge too much intelligence to David for fear of putting his life in jeopardy. The reason he provided for Gretchen not being with him in New Mexico was because she went her separate way once they got to El Paso. Had David lost contact with reality again, perhaps being afflicted with a bout of paranoia, or was he simply trying to deflect attention away from himself, blaming a strange conspiracy theory, or pointing his finger at Gretchen's ex-husband? Whatever he was doing, one thing he failed at was diverting suspicion from himself. The police were even more suspicious of him than ever before, and even if Gretchen had witnessed serious wrongdoing in her office, there's no way she would have ran away, leaving her daughter behind. Incidentally, it turned out Gretchen had never reported such an incident to anyone, and she loved her job. It was a fabricated story he was probably trying to use to throw the authorities off. A warrant was obtained to seize his truck and possessions, and what they found was another shocking discovery. There was a number of phones in his truck, one of which belonged to Gretchen. Additionally, 2 Amazon Echo devices, which uses the Alexa software, alongside some dismounted security cameras, attracted a lot of attention, as these were items taken from Gretchen's home. Something else detected in the vehicle were traces of blood, plus a foul odour. For the time being, though, David was able to walk away with his dog Kobe, as enough evidence hadn't been generated yet. He remained in the area, waiting for his truck to be returned. Back in Florida, on the 30th of March, Jupiter police finally received the recordings from Gretchen's home security that they'd been waiting for, and what it revealed was horrific.
In surveillance footage recovered from Gretchen's home, a dark figure can be seen lurking on her patio. Moments later, out of the camera's view, Gretchen makes a muffled cry for help. Then what's done in the darkness comes to light. In the garage, a man wearing rubber gloves can be seen loading items into Gretchen's car. His back remains to the camera right until this moment. Investigators pull this freeze frame.
On the morning of the 21st of March, shortly after 6 a.m, the video made it crystal clear that that was David Anthony in a garage. It was recorded the same time the neighbour heard that blood-curdling scream. The desperately muffled request for the Alexa device to call 911, the same device found in his vehicle, were the final words Gretchen ever uttered. In one of the shots not shown to the public for obvious reasons, Gretchen's blood-soaked head could be seen behind him as he paced around the garage. A water jug with a blood-like substance on it was also observed, and after being captured on camera, all traces of the security system were then ripped down by David, who was wearing gloves, and later found in his truck in New Mexico. Officers were appalled as they saw this footage, which was watched repeatedly. It provided concrete proof they were looking at not just her estranged husband, but more importantly, her killer. They knew he was somewhere in Las Cruces, so they obtained a warrant that same day for his arrest, as this was no longer a search for a missing person, but rather it was a homicide investigation. Therefore, in New Mexico, where David was hanging around waiting for his truck to be returned to him by the police, authorities canvassed the area and had multiple agencies on the lookout, and it didn't take long. Because the next evening, just before midnight on the 31st, David, by chance, was spotted walking his faithful dog Kobe near a convenience store. where he was conveniently arrested.
There's a warrant for your arrest, and I'm going to explain that when we get back to the... Excuse me?
What?
Homicide.
For who?
Who do you think?
So, after a man on that crossed 6 states spanning 2,000 miles, on the 31st of March, David Anthony was finally in custody for the murder of his estranged wife. He continually denied he was involved, even expressing disbelief on his own face that he was a suspect. And this deception continued when he was interrogated at the state police headquarters in Las Cruces, New Mexico.
You have her phone, you sent the text messages, you planted her car at Jupiter Medical Center because you're on video doing it.
We have all that information. She had me do it.
You put your hand over her mouth and dragged her into the garage.
It's on video, David. Still alive. Gretchen's still alive. You'll have to ask her.
We can't ask her, she's dead.
She's dead.
Why?
You don't have video of me killing her.
How do you know what we have?
Show it to me.
Show
me the video.
Her dead body?
Show me the video.
Her dead body is right
Show
there.
me the video.
I know that it exists.
Okay, then show it to me.
And right away, David made it known it wouldn't be easy for them getting him to talk. Detectives were stunned by his denial, despite damning video evidence in their possession. I mean, he told them Gretchen travelled with him until they reached El Paso, and as they were apparently driving separate vehicles, she then took off and went her own way, due to that conspiracy theory connected to her employment that David had made up. They talked about those text messages from Gretchen's phone, and that no records ever existed that she was in any treatment centres. He was accused of planting her car at the Jupiter Medical Center, and that he was seen on surveillance footage walking away. That was the only time he acknowledged it was him dropping the car off, as he said she had him do it. Everything else he contradicted, even the stuff they observed on the security video from Gretchen's property, as he insisted she was still alive. In fact, he made the point 35 times that she wasn't dead. Now, they tried everything to get him talking, even playing an audio recording of Gretchen's daughter, someone he was allegedly very close to, who begged David to tell them where her mother was. He falsely claimed that that wasn't Gretchen's daughter speaking, leading to the request for a lawyer. The question everyone wanted an answer for pertained to the whereabouts of poor Gretchen, but this man was keeping that information to himself. David was consequently charged with second-degree murder and extradited to Florida. The most troubling thing about this case was no one knew where Gretchen's body was, and without a body it made the whole investigation so much more difficult, creating a challenge for the prosecution. David was well aware of this. However, while he was held in custody, a grand jury indicted him on the charge of kidnapping and raised the offence of murder from second to first degree. He was now eligible for the death penalty, and authorities continued searching for Gretchen, but were getting nowhere. David was able to use his crime as leverage in the end because Gretchen's family were terribly desperate for closure and, of course, wanted to arrange a proper burial. But that seemed like a stretch of their imagination, as everyone was losing hope. And then, after 9 months of keeping the murder to himself, David finally caved in on the condition he'd get a lighter sentence. A plea deal was worked out.
Now, prosecutors and police here in Jupiter made it very clear they made this plea deal for Gretchen Anthony's family. They say they very much wanted a life sentence for David Anthony, but finding Gretchen's body was more important.
On December the 21st, David admitted what everyone already knew, that he murdered his wife. And on that same day, her body was recovered.
At approximately 3:30 p.m., investigators located what is believed to be Gretchen Anthony.
The discovery was made in a small area just off of Bush Road in Jupiter, just south of Indiantown Road. And it comes exactly 9 months from the day Gretchen Anthony disappeared.
An autopsy was carried out, which explained why the neighbour heard screams the morning Gretchen disappeared, as David had stabbed her in the neck and the torso, plus a number of defensive wounds were noted, suggesting Gretchen had fought hard for her life. And although it was somewhat comforting having found Gretchen's body, her sister had some words for David, as well as a heartfelt petition to the judge on behalf of the whole family.
You are a monster. You robbed us of these experiences with Gretchen. You don't deserve to have a life.
At least this nightmare of a human being will spend a good chunk of his life in prison after pleading guilty to second-degree murder and kidnapping. His release date is scheduled for 2058, when he'll be 81 years old. For those of you wondering what happened to Colby, his faithful dog that was travelling with him, to put your mind at ease, it was adopted by another family who I'm sure gave it a decent home.